Have you ever wondered what a society would actually look like if it was completely, literally stripped of human ego and materialism? Well, hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We are going to take a deeply fascinating anthropological dive into a highly specific piece of speculative world building. We're looking at a translated text by Feng titled A Glance at the Thousand-Year World. And this isn't just a simple fantasy story. It's a meticulously crafted utopian society with its own unique rules for geography, daily routines, and some deeply alien biology. We're going to unpack exactly how this society functions, step by step, using the text's own incredibly vivid details. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, a utopian geography. Second, daily life and sentience. Third, the Melon Festival. Fourth, celestial philosophy. And finally, biological divergence. Let's dive right in.
Starting off with Section 1, a utopian geography, mapping the celestial realm.
So what immediately stands out in the source material is the sheer precision of this world. It's not some vague, misty fairyland. No, it's a fully mapped territory with named valleys, rivers, and really specific population metrics. The text explicitly outlines three main settlements. You've got Mount Butterfly, situated in the Lotus Mountains, Sakura Island, and the Lush Highland, which you actually have to reach by crossing Fragrant Hill and Sesame Slope. And get this. Across this vast expanse of 200 miles, there is a total population of only about 300 celestials. That incredibly low population density is the foundational bedrock of their tranquil, resource-rich, and entirely uncrowded existence.
To really ground this fantasy in hard numbers, the text gives us the exact demographic breakdown of the Mount Butterfly settlement. Out of the 39 total residents living there are exactly 22 female celestials, 15 male celestials, and just 2 children. Now think about why a static population like that matters. By having practically zero population growth, this society completely eliminates human issues like war, famine, or resource scarcity. This isn't some booming, expanding civilization, right? It's a carefully balanced, static community that exists in perfect equilibrium with its environment.
Moving on to Section 2, Daily Life and Sentience, Harmony with Nature.
So, going from the macro geography to the micro level, let's look at the daily routines of these celestials. To understand how they actually live day to day, the source material anchors us to a specific character named Jade. Imagine starting your day in a completely zero-waste loop. For us humans, sustainability is a constant struggle, but for Jade, it's just her baseline reality. She wakes up wearing a light blue skirt made of nearly transparent silk and immediately sets to work in a symbiotic loop with nature. She tends to exactly 3,000 silkworms housed in 3 bamboo baskets, each about 3 square meters. She feeds them mulberry leaves, gently shakes the baskets so the silkworm excrement falls through the gaps, sweeps it into a wicker dustpan, and then just buries it at the roots of the local flowers as fertilizer. It's a literal, flawless ecosystem where absolutely nothing is wasted.
Later, Jade interacts with a 6-year-old child named Lung, who recites poetry taught to him by his elders. And through Long's education, we learn about this concept of the holographic order, or universal sentience. In this society, it's taught as absolute truth that rivers, stars, breezes, birds, and even the melons they grow actually possess feelings and exist as emotional peers to the celestials themselves. They live in a world where every single element of nature is alive and fundamentally sentient. I mean, think about how radical that philosophy is. When they eat a melon, they believe they are interacting with an emotional peer, existing in this profoundly interconnected state.
Which naturally brings us to Section 3, the Melon Festival and Rituals of Courtship.
This deep reverence for nature seamlessly transitions right into their communal celebrations. We turn to the Melon Festival, which is a gathering initiated purely by the ripening of a specific crop, melons grown from seeds planted exactly 3 years prior. But this isn't just a casual party. It actually acts as a highly structured biological and social mechanism for courtship. The whole event is driven by a celestial named Mezda from the Lush Highland, who is entering a phase of biological readiness. The progression is entirely ritualized. First, the females perform a mulberry leaf-picking dance, while males form a bridge within their circle. Second, Mezda is lifted onto the shoulders of a male, Kin, allowing her to sort of survey the crowd. And finally, setting the stage for what comes next, the suitors have to compete to win her favor through a rapid-fire, highly metaphorical poetry match.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they communicate desire.
Rather than stating her intentions bluntly, Meta kicks off the poetry match with these incredibly evocative, provocative verses. She says, "Waves run high in the vast lake, twin peaks rise above the earth, seeds sprout in a dense forest, but a duet still lacks the other instrument." She uses all this imagery of the natural world, vast lakes, twin peaks, sprouting seeds, to express a profound internal longing and physical readiness.
And the male suitors respond in kind, really attempting to match her metaphorical complexity. A suitor named Chizuo steps forward with this response. "I row with a paddle across Double Peak Valley, get wet passing the jungles, rising hills and streams appear. I find my way back and forth and reach heaven." It is a super sophisticated, highly suggestive double entendre that completely mirrors her natural imagery with his own active participation. Why does this matter to us? Well, compared to human courtship, it shows a society that places the ultimate value on intellectual sharpness and artistic expression rather than just physical appearance.
All right, Section 4, Philosophy of the Celestials, the 30,000-year-old garden.
After the courtship rituals, the narrative shifts to the intellectual core of their society. We arrive at the entertainment garden. And guys, this is a staggeringly ancient sanctuary that has been built up for more than 30,000 years. It features a central square surrounded by 300 soft-matted stone benches, and a biodiverse, crystal-clear ring lake filled with coral reef-like rockeries. Within this ancient garden, we are introduced to the true elders of the society. Celestials like Pine, River, and Cloud are roughly 800 years old. 800! Yet despite their immense age, they are described as being in perfect health with sharp senses, just sitting around this peaceful coral reef lake, acting as philosophical guides and musical accompanies for the younger generations.
The 800-year-old elder, Pine, delivers a lecture on the Tao that directly contrasts human psychology with celestial enlightenment. Let's really pause and think about this for a second. According to this philosophy, our human anxiety, our depression, our stress, they are entirely byproducts of our obsession with owning things. Pine argues that human, or mortal, suffering is totally driven by possessions, ego, and psychological burdens. In stark contrast, celestial freedom is achieved by maintaining an empty mind, practicing total selflessness, refusing to possess even a single needle, and acting completely in accordance with nature. They suffer no emotional distress simply because they claim ownership over absolutely nothing.
Yet what is absolutely fascinating is the juxtaposition that follows. Literally immediately after absorbing this profound, enlightened lecture on the Tao, the Celestials transition seamlessly into playing childlike games of hide-and-seek and telling jokes. They engage in a riddle game filled with incredibly suggestive double entendres that just leaves everyone roaring with laughter. It's honestly amazing and kind of surprising, right? These ancient enlightened monks basically spend their free time telling dirty jokes and playing hide-and-seek. Their enlightenment doesn't make them rigid or stoic at all. It makes them playful, uninhibited, and deeply, deeply joyful.
Which takes us to our final section, Section 5, Biological and Moral Divergence, the Alien Biology.
Now we have to transition to the most radically different aspect of this world. To truly understand the thousand-year world, we've got to maintain a strictly objective anthropological lens to examine their biology, because it operates on completely different principles than human anatomy. Unlike humans, the Celestials do not have a regular ongoing physical intimacy. Their physical encounters are dictated by a hard biological imperative called celestial estrus. Female Celestials have a really rare menstrual cycle that only occurs once every 3 months. Just before this cycle ends, they enter an estrus period. This means their drive for physical intimacy only happens maybe 3 or 4 times a year. It's incredibly rare, but explosively powerful when it does happen.
The source text explicitly outlines the distinct biological differences between the sexes here. Because the female encounters are so infrequent, their biological energy accumulates over months into what the text actually calls a reservoir of desire. When the gate opens, it becomes an uncontrollable flood. Male Celestials, on the other hand, are biologically configured completely differently. They exhibit total self-control. Their desire is described as completely reactive. Without the external stimulus of a female in estrus, they simply have no physical desires at all. They are completely free of human diseases and mental blocks, which allows their bodies to function with immense, uninhibited vigor.
The text details this process super neutrally, referring to it as the opening of the gate. When Maida's accumulated biological imperative is finally released, it's not a matter of standard human romance, but a strictly necessary biological function. Because her accumulated reservoir is so vast after months of dormancy, a single partner is just physically insufficient. She's met first by the muscular celestial Becky, but to fully drain this biological reservoir and avoid severe physical discomfort in the coming months, she has to be sequentially met by 5 more suitors: Sang, Raisin, Chiron, Chixuo, and finally Basong.
And right at this point, the author introduces a completely fascinating piece of meta-narrative framing. Rather than detailing the rest of the encounters, the text abruptly stops and states, "These stories are omitted because mortals cannot morally bear for them to be described." The author explicitly highlights that human morality is utterly inadequate to judge these celestial acts. It's a completely different species with its own deeply ingrained lifestyle and moral compass.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer and leaves us with the truly provocative question. We've mapped their lands, we've observed their daily harmony, and we've dissected their totally alien biology. But looking at this deeply speculative world, you really have to wonder, can our current human consciousness ever truly evolve to comprehend, let alone accept, the utterly different morals of the thousand-year world? It's a brilliant example of how speculative world-building forces us to question the limits of our own deeply held perspectives. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpack this explainer today, and remember, keep questioning the worlds around you.